Leslie, hang tight just a second. There we go. We made it. We're live. Okay, everybody, here's what we're doing today on the podcast, on the live show. Again, remember, everybody, Group Coach Nation, if you're listening to the podcast, we do these things live, typically Tuesday mornings. And you're welcome to jump in anytime on whatever platform you're finding it on, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever, and ask questions and comments as we go along. Always here for you. I got Leslie Kawai on the call today because she's a human behavioralist. She's a researcher. She's a communicator about the connections that we make as coaches, as leaders. She does an enormous amount of coaching in very large firms and organizations around the world. She's very accomplished as a writer and a researcher and communicator in this field. So Leslie and I met, I don't know, Leslie, a couple of months ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, the stuff you're talking about is what we need. So today we're talking about self-awareness and success, explained by a human behavioralist who actually knows what she's talking about. This self-awareness piece for coaches, as all of us know, and then Leslie, I'll give you the mic here. As all of us know, as coaches and consultants, success is a huge thing for us. We want to be who we are. We want to build our business. We want to impact people. And if we're honest about it, we have lots of doubt often, imposter syndrome, all kinds of things that keep us awake at 2 a.m. at night. And some of that's real. And the hardest part of being a human is you don't know often what you're not seeing, your blind spots are, and where you're not really making those connections happen. So, Leslie, thank you so much for your time and being here. Really appreciate what you do. Can you just, before you even start to talk about the stuff we're here to talk about, can you kind of give us a picture into what does your day look like when you're researching, writing, communicating? I mean, are you in front of screens all day? Like, what does your world look like?
Funny you say that. I just got back a couple of days ago from my 21st trip to Boston in 5 months. So, but actually I don't always travel that much. So, I mean, for me, it's a combination of being in front of my screen, working at Zoom, which isn't it so great that the technical capabilities of our world and society have opened up all of the ways to connect with people, to coach, to influence. And of course, you know, I get to do that too. And coach individuals now all over the world. Right. So, and I absolutely love that. And often I'm working face-to-face with clients, depending on the project.
That's so cool. I love what you do. I love your research. I'm so glad you're letting us peek into your world a little bit. Okay. So before we jump in this call, for all of you who don't have podcasts or shows, you don't know what happens before and after the call are always the best conversations. So I was like, oh my gosh, Leslie, we got to stop this conversation and take this on the air. So before we got in the call, we were talking about self-awareness and leadership. And really, I think, Leslie, the question I asked you was, hey, when you're actually working with clients, what is the number one thing you see popping up that you're like, oh my gosh, this is what's in your way, dear leader, dear communicator, and they don't even know it. So keep going down that path, because you went down the self-awareness path and how that has a huge impact. Explain that a little more.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, you know, every leader, I dare say every human wants to show up in a way that adds value. They want to show up in a way that has meaning, that they're contributing, that is beneficial to the people that they're coaching, influencing, talking with, to themselves, to their families, right? I mean, and so often we think that what is a barrier based on either the results that we are or aren't getting, the feedback that people are or aren't giving to us, or the obstacles that we're hitting. And, you know, if nothing changes, right? If we keep trying to tackle the feedback, the challenges, the lack of results in the same way every time, under the assumption of what we think that we know about ourselves, we tend to always get the same results. So I loved the question that you were asking me earlier about, you know, the sort of what is one of the big things that really holds people back. And my answer to that was self-awareness, a true self-awareness about what it is that they can do to change, and a willingness to tackle that, right? And it takes courage to do a deep self-assessment. There's a vulnerability around that. And, you know, I do leadership research. So I research what for leaders and at what stages of growth in leadership and organizations, what helps people to be able to contribute and drive organizational value. And there is a strong correlation between a leader's self-awareness and their ability to drive organizational value. So great leaders understand what their weaknesses are. They understand what their strengths are, and they're transparent around that in order to mitigate that for the organizations that they serve.
Oh,
so
okay.
so
Go ahead.
leaders
You're mentioning so many things. This is great.
leaders with, I'm going to say ego, and we all have this, right? We all kind of want to minimize our flaws and build on our strengths. And there's good reasons to do that. And being able to really understand how I'm wired and how I'm not wired and how other humans are wired fast tracks my ability to have influence with other people. And I can give you some examples of that, of what I'm thinking of, if that's helpful.
Let me ask a question first.
Yeah.
So we have to be vulnerable and authentic as leaders, that, hey, I'm becoming more self-aware, I'm learning, I'm growing, because that encourages our teams to do the same. Great. But there's this gap, right? Because we've all worked for this person, or we all work with this person, we all know this person who, like, oh my gosh, they need help and they think they're a freaking genius at everything. What is the first step? We can't change somebody else. Everybody, we're in charge of ourselves, right? Just be the best you. Okay. For those of us listening who are wondering, I wonder if I'm actually aware of what I need or not. How do we just look in the mirror real quick and know, do we need some awareness help?
Yeah. So that's great. So that's two different things. I'm going to write like sort of the scenario of, how about that leader or that person that I'm working with that just doesn't get it. I can see that they need change, but they're not willing to change. Let me come back to that in a minute. And then the second piece, which is, how do I ensure that I'm not that guy, right? Or that girl, that I'm, how do I know if I'm tackling my own strengths and weaknesses? The second question that I heard. So let me start with that one.
That's the better one.
Something most immediately we can own.
That's right? The only thing everybody here can actually do something about, right?
Yeah. Well, there are always ways to have influence, but position and opportunity kind of help inform other things. And I would love to come back to that too. But let me start at this space, which is, we can all initiate seeking feedback. Great leaders seek feedback. So how many people, how many of you who are listening in the last, let's go 6 months, in fact, I'm going to go back a year, have actually reached out to 5 people who know you, 5 people that you're not sure what their opinions are, and you've said, and I'm going to give you a really simple question to ask. Can you tell me 2 things that you think I do really well and 2 things that you think I could do to improve? And if 2 feels vulnerable, ask 1, right? That's sort of a mini 360, right? So I help write and design 360s for organizations. So I'm like hugely glad you asked that question. I love bringing the feedback cycle to organizations, right? Because it's part of that growth mindset cycle. It's part of what helps people learn and grow. So if you haven't in the last year reached out to people who work around you, and don't just ask your best friend, don't ask your mom, so to speak, right? Like figuratively speaking, ask those who have different kinds of relationships. Ask people that you deliver to, who are your stakeholders. Ask people that you work with. Ask people who are your mentors. Ask people who you influence, and ask them, what are 2 things you see as my strengths? And what are 2 areas that you think I could improve on? And why, right? Because you want to understand the perspective that they're coming from. And that then becomes an enriching experience. Thank them for their feedback. And if you want to go even a step farther in the accountability and growth cycle, reply back to them and say, I reached out to several of my key friends and family and key stakeholders and customers to see what my strengths are, what I could do to improve. Here are 3 things that I learned. Thank you so much for the feedback. And here are some things I'm going to be doing to work on this. I'd love your partnership in giving me ongoing feedback, XYZ, because how is that different? Well, you've just up-leveled it from someone who is willing to ask and is now willing to change and is now committed to change. And people then, they care about you, and they're going to want to give feedback to help you to be successful. And you've given them an open, unstated invitation, and sometimes you can make it stated, to be your peer partner in your growth. Right? So seeking feedback is a really powerful way. The second piece, and I cannot iterate this enough, I share this everywhere I go, because it is just a key to growth, success, and leadership. And it's reflection. Reflection. So I recently completed a study looking at a set of leadership behaviors and a huge population of leaders across corporate and global companies, looking at pre to post COVID. What were the biggest shifts and changes? And here's how this relates to your question about how and why we need to change. Well, the leaders who can navigate and manage cognitive complexity, who can think about, and their ability to process difficult scenarios and situations, is a strong differentiator for great leaders post-COVID. We have to manage a lot of complexity. And this ability to change, grow, and evolve with the changing, growing world is another differentiator. So the ability to think in more complex ways and to act with more flexibility, right? Can you see this connection to your question about, okay, am I growing and am I learning? We have to be willing to change in this crazy world. And reflection is a key piece. So what do I mean by that? Take 15 minutes, 30 minutes every week, write it on your calendar. Success is scheduled, right? Success is scheduled. This is we're scheduling in our self-awareness for success here, right? But 15, 30 minutes, and sit down and do your own personal after action review. What went well this week? What did I learn? What could I do differently? If you commit to that 30 minutes every week of that reflection, you are going to be one of those self-aware leaders who continuously keeps growing and learning, right? Wow. Growing and learning in a pattern that will be able to meet today's challenges. If you're not doing that, it's going to be really difficult for you to grow and evolve at the pace and at the level of complexity that you need to as an influencer, as a coach, as a communicator, as a leader.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad we're recording this. I have so many things to do here.
Well. Two things. Seek feedback. Be open to seeking feedback, right? And the title of this isn't growth mindset, but there's a lot of it that could be, because self-awareness is a huge part of growth mindset. And so seek feedback and build in time for reflection. And I'm going to add a piece to this, which is, I'm a huge advocate. There's science behind it around hand journaling, right? We do everything digitally. Now, any self-reflection is good self-reflection, but self-reflection where you're writing something down is really good for your brain. It puts the process of learning in the prefrontal cortex, like in the right part of the brain, to help you make more connections and meaning about what it is that you're doing. So that would be, 15 minutes, great. 30 minutes of journaling a week in that after action review is even better. Now let's up level it. Take those learnings and commit to reach out to one person who can give you more insight around whatever it is that you just journaled and learned. So what am I doing? Now I've become aware of an area that I want to grow in my understanding or my skill set. And now I'm reaching out to someone else who has another perspective, a diverse perspective, a broader perspective, a more skilled perspective. I'm engaging in the learning process, right?
Ooh, wow.
Now, those are all 3 steps, but and any one of them are going to be beneficial. But
Mm-hmm.
the unaware leader just is continuing in this, they're continuing to try to hit the same challenges in the same ways, right?
Yeah.
Until it gets too painful, then maybe they switch. But they're not like really learning how to leaps and bounds
Right.
navigate new things.
This
So
is
it's really important.
okay. For those of you listening, I just wrote this down for those of you watching, bottom of the screen. Seek feedback. I put 4 things down here. You said 3, but I think the 4th one, getting for help, is so important. Seek feedback. Schedule reflection time on your calendar weekly. Hand journal what you're learning and how that's going through the process in your brain. And then ask for help on the things that you're learning. I need to get better at this. Who do I know to get mentored in this, to get a little more clarity, to get a life hack, whatever it needs to be. So, wow. Okay, you do this. I've got another question here in a second, but you do this professionally. Your LinkedIn profile. By the way, I'm putting her LinkedIn profile, Leslie, your LinkedIn profile here up on the screen. It's long. I don't know if the numbers are important or not. There's lots of Leslie Kawai's out there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this also in the chat here. So whatever platform we're on right now, I'm going to drop Leslie's
And
LinkedIn
actually,
profile there. Yeah.
if they Google Leslie Kawai, my name, and leadership, my links are going to come up. They're going to pop
Yeah,
up.
you're out. You've done so much. Yeah. By the way, her name is spelled Leslie. For those of you listening in, Leslie, and Kawai is Kawai.
And the leadership development organization design for my work with is rbl.net. So if you Google my name and RBL for results-based leadership.net, they're going to find me. Happy to answer questions, whatever I can.
Perfect. Okay. I just also dropped that link for your LinkedIn profile in the comments underneath the YouTube video as well, for anybody watching on YouTube.
Chris, I want to add another thought, may I, around this self-awareness? Because there's, we show up to the table of sort of, okay, thinking about ourselves and feedback, right? Like if I'm sort of sitting at the table of all my feedback and what I think about myself and this plate of stuff here in front of me. And a lot of times we're scared to start digging in, right? We're scared to tackle it because we're human and there's a vulnerability around that, right? So, and I want to say from a professional stance, there's not a right or a wrong. You are perfectly wired as you. Every single person is perfectly wired as you. And I tell executives all over the world around this, and every executive, every level of leadership has that same vulnerability. And you are perfectly wired just as you are. And a genuine engagement in this helps you to see and be better at choice for how to engage in healthy, helpful ways, given how you're wired. I have literally, I do extensive psychometric and cognitive testing. I've never met or tested or coached 2 individuals who are the exact same, ever once. We're all over the spectrum in so many ways, right? There are out-of-the-box innovative thinkers, and out-of-the-box innovative thinkers, there are areas that they need to think about and consider that are vulnerabilities given their strengths. There are those who are wired for compliance, right? Like every time an idea comes up, they're thinking, okay, what are the 100 reasons that this thing could fail? And sometimes they struggle in organizations when they're wired that way. And that is a huge strength. And understanding the strength helps them to understand when to pull it out as a tool out of their toolbox and apply it, and when and what situations they need to pull different tools and where they need to build the muscles for those tools. Every human has things that they do well and things that are not their strengths. And it isn't about everyone trying to sort of hit 100 on a scale of 0 to 100 in some, mysterious perfection scale. It truly isn't about that. The self-awareness sort of feast in front of you is digging into the feedback, that willingness to engage, and the willingness to say, okay, who are the audiences that I care about? Who are the people that this is my personal belief, who are the people I'm trying to help, right? Where are the organizations or the coaching clients or the companies that I'm trying to add value, the stages that I'm trying to influence my audience for, and better understanding, how I'm naturally wired compared to the rest of the world helps me understand my biases so that I can bring more value to the people that I'm communicating with. And so that I can understand how to fast track that value add contribution cycle.
Okay, we got to leave this somewhere. Here's what I'm going to do. The Leslie's LinkedIn profile is in the chat. Look up her name, Leslie Kawai, leadership. Leslie Kawai, leadership. You'll find her everywhere on Google. I just did, oh my gosh, like multiple pages deep. It's all you. On the bottom of the screen here, seek feedback. Schedule reflection time for yourself on a weekly basis. Hand journal what you're learning and ask for help. Those 4 things. Reach out to Leslie. This is so not our expertise here at Group Coach Nation. As you know, Leslie, we teach people how to build high-ticket group coaching programs and masterminds. That's why people listen to our show. The reason we had you on our show is because we're all leaders, and it's so important for us to get out of our own way so that we can be the best who we are and minimize some of those things that we're just blind to sometimes. So, Leslie, thank you.
Yeah, and this is for coaches. I coach coaches to do the same thing, right? Coaches are still learning how to be better coaches.
I sure am.
So, and try it as an experiment. Don't do it once and then make a judgment. Commit to do this for a 90-day period and see the difference. That's my invitation. Thank you so much for having me on, Chris.
Y'all reach out to Leslie. Thank you, Leslie. Just nothing else, tell her thank you. But also, she's got tons of resources, directions she can point you, other videos, downloadables, whatever you need to kind of get your brain around this, or a conversation with her if that's really what you want to get into, which hopefully it is for all of us, truly. Okay, Leslie, thank you. Group Coach Nation, as always, do work, get results. Just please do the right work. That is why we have you here on this show today. For everybody, is you're listening in, you're watching in, because we want you doing the right work. So just do the right work like Leslie's talking about. Seek feedback, schedule reflection, hand journal, ask for help. Leslie Kawai, thank you. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.